they were celebrating the victory of Yud Tes Kislev at a big Farbrengen. They were celebrating. At that time, the Tzemach Tzedek was still a young boy, 9 years old. So he was also there, dancing and celebrating. And then he gave a patch on the table, and he said that this is like Simchas Torah to others, and therefore we're going to make a kafis and dance with the Tanya. And he started honoring, just like by a kafis, you honor people. This one is honored with the first Sefer Torah, this one, the second Sefer Torah. So he was honoring people to go a kafis with the book of Tanya. And actually, that's the way they were celebrating. When he told the Alter Rebbe this, the Alter Rebbe called him in and gave him a bracha. And he said that actually what you did was really so, because Tanya is the Torah Shebeksav of Chassidus. I don't know if you ever heard that expression. Yeah. So Torah Shebeksav means, just like in Torah in general, there's the written Torah, and then there's the oral Torah, which means everything that came in all future generations from all the great tzaddikim, the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Midrashim, and everyone after that, whatever they wrote, it's all included in the written Torah. So the Alter Rebbe said that same as with Tanya, that this includes everything that will be revealed in the future generations in Chassidus. And that goes together with what I told you last time, that there are 53 chapters in Tanya, and there's also 53 chapters in Chumash. It's called, we refer to it as Gan. Gan means a garden, and Gan of the Gematria, Nun Gimel, 53. And there are a number of things which are similar. In fact, there were Chassidim that, we learn Chitas today, but there were Chassidim that used to learn the Tanya in a way that it corresponded with the Parsha of the week. And that there's a correlation between the first chapter in Tanya with the first Parsha, the second chapter in Tanya and the second Parsha, and so on. So the everyone's explained. First of all, technically, this was the first sefer that was ever written. The people follow the Baal Shem Tov, follow the Baal Shem Tov's path. There was never a sefer that was written that defines what is the path of Chassidus. This is really the first one. So it's not just first chronologically, but obviously the Alter Rebbe invested in the Tanya, and there are also different versions exactly. And I guess there must be a way of reconciling both. But it says that the Alter Rebbe spent, one place it says he spent 20 years on writing the Tanya. And just to give an example of how precise every word is and every letter is, that Alter Rebbe once showed someone that there was a certain vav in a word, a vav that he spent 6 weeks going back and forth whether he should put in the vav or not put in the vav. In other words, if you put in the vav, then it will mean one thing. If you don't put it in, it means another thing. And he was going over what would be the advantage of putting it in or the advantage of not putting it in. And obviously he went into the subject deeper and deeper and deeper and spent 6 weeks till he made the decision to put in the vav. And
do we know which vav it is?
Yeah, I was just going to talk about that. Here's my Tanya. Let me look at inside. This is when I went to Australia, the Rebbe gave us the Tanya. Pocket Tanya. So I think it's in chapter Membeis 42. And let me see if I remember which exact line. I think it's this. I don't remember, I'm not sure. But it was, I think in chapter 42, in the beginning, it says that in every generation, everyone has some aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu in them. And Moshe Rabbeinu, he is considered the ultimate and the most general shepherd, that he provides Klal Yisrael with their sustenance. And what's the sustenance? It gives them life and godliness. So the words here is chayus, life, the elokus, and godliness. And that vav, that's what I heard the Alter Rebbe was questioning, whether it should be there or not. It should be life, godliness, which would mean like godly life, or life and godliness. The picture of the Alter Rebbe is also, by the way, related. Generally speaking, there are no pictures of only the tzaddikim of those generations. We don't have any pictures. And if there are pictures, who knows if it's authentic. This picture of the Alter Rebbe is not only authentic, but Tzemach Tzedek saw this picture, and he testified that it's as precise and accurate as could be. How did we get the picture? How did that happen? So the Free Rebbe writes a story that he heard from his grandmother, Rebbetzin Rivka, the Rebbetzin of the Rebbe Marash, that the Tzemach Tzedek once needed to go to Petersburg because there were certain communal issues that had to be cleared up with the government. Tzemach Tzedek wasn't up to going, so instead of going himself, he sent the Rebbe Marash. So he was by a meeting with a lot of officers and ministers and top-notch people in the government. And after the meeting, one of the people that was at the meeting comes over to Rabbi Marash and said, "I want to show you my, I collect art. I want to show you something in my art collection." So he said, "Okay." And he went with him the next day, and he shows him a picture of a rabbi. And the date was the day that the Alter Rebbe was arrested. But the Rebbe Marash never saw the Alter Rebbe. So you wouldn't know this is the Alter Rebbe. And he said, "How did you get these pictures?" So he said, underneath the picture, and explained his father used to work in the jail that was in Petersburg. And just like today, if a person goes to jail, they take a picture of him. Those days they had no camera, so they had artists who would just draw a picture of the person who was arrested. So they drew a picture of him. And being that he's in collecting art, so at one point when his father left, they gave him permission. He liked this picture, that he can take it with him. And it's in his art collection. So he, from the date and from the story that this was a person who tried to make a revolution against the government, a rabbi, he was pretty sure this was the Alter Rebbe. Came back, he told the Tzemach Tzedek what happened. He asked some questions about the picture, and also said it looks like this is the Alter Rebbe. And when you go back again, try to find this minister and see if you can get it from him, that we could borrow it for a few weeks. A year or two later, he went back. By this time, this minister didn't live there anymore. They found out where he was. They went to find him. Eventually, he found him. And obviously, this minister was very impressed with the Rebbe Marash. That's why he called him and he brought him. So when he heard his request, he said he agrees to lend it to them for a few weeks. He brought it back to Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek said that the picture is exactly the way the Alter Rebbe looked, and it's so precise that one of the things the Alter Rebbe had, he had a certain condition that the flesh on his nose was kept peeling. In fact, the Masnagdim used that also, because the doctors didn't know what the cause was. And they were explaining it not in a way which is not so physical. They said that this man has certain desires that he just can't fulfill. Thank you very much. And because of that, it's affecting this condition in his body. So what kind of desire could the Alter Rebbe have that he can't fulfill? They didn't read the Hayom Yom that day. So they knew the desire was, he wants to become the Tsar. The real desire was actually today's Hayom Yom, which is the last Hayom Yom of the Chassidish year, the Chassidish calendar. The Alter Rebbe said, I'm not interested in Gan Eden. I'm not interested in Olam Haba. I'm not interested in all the shining lights. I want Hashem. I want your essence. But he can't connect to the essence because then the neshama would just expire. So that's why that was going on. So Alter Rebbe said he saw in the picture, even that detail is evident in the picture. Naturally, by us, the picture is a picture of a picture, the copies of copies of copies. But once they had the picture, they made the copies. That's how we have the picture, and the Tzemach Tzedek basically testified that it's accurate. But what we see from this story, though, what is the picture? That the Rebbe Marash's Rebbetzin, the Rebbe Tzarifka told the Frierdiker Rebbe that they had the picture, I think, for 3 weeks, and every day my husband and my father-in-law, when nobody knew that they had the picture, went into a room, put on the gartel, and then Tzemach Tzedek was just looking at the picture. The same with the Rebbe Marash, and they did that every day for the next 3 weeks before they gave it back. So you see from this that a picture, even though it's just a picture on the wall, but somehow it manifests what the person was, what the person looked like. And through the picture, you can connect to the person as well. Yes.
Why is it okay that we have like a copy of a copy of a copy if it's not 100% accurate? Like, does it still have
No, it's still accurate. I'm saying a detail like that you wouldn't find on the
This is the painting.
This picture of the Rebbe is all blurry altogether. You see all the pictures. In other words, the picture we have of the Alter Rebbe is a copy of another copy, and a copy of another. So things are not as sharp as it was in the original. The original, if you looked at that part of the picture, the nose, you can see that it's evident that he has a certain condition. Today, you won't see it, but the picture itself, the Alter Rebbe's image is identical to what it was.
Where is that picture?
The Alter Rebbe's picture. This is the famous picture. There's only one picture of the Alter Rebbe.
This is the photo that they have, that the Rebbe Marash and the Tzemach Tzedek.
Yeah, this picture. Not this one, because this one is like very, very it's you can hardly see, it's very not sharp. But there are pictures that are very sharp. And those are this is the picture. There's no other picture of the Alter Rebbe. So after the Alter Rebbe went out of jail, like I mentioned the other day, the Alter Rebbe was in jail because of spreading Chassidus, and there was mainly a kitrut up there more than what happened down there. In fact, what happened down there was only a result because there was a kitrut. Kitrut means a prosecuting case against the Alter Rebbe. So once the Alter Rebbe went out of jail, not only did he continue doing what he did before, but he began to reveal Chassidus in greater measure. And greater measure means, number one, he began to spread it more. And number two, the way he gave over Chassidus also changed. Before he went to jail, it was shorter. And after he went to jail, he began to elaborate on the subject much, much more with examples and explanations, just to make it more intellectual, more logical. So by Hasidim, there was an expression when he spoke about something the Alter Rebbe wrote or something the Alter Rebbe said, they would ask, was this before Petersburg or after Petersburg? So Petersburg was the line that separated between the way Hasidus was revealed before and after. One of the questions of, if you look at Tanya explains in a very clear way everything that we find in Tanya. So there's a sikha that says actually this was an amazing thing that the Alter Rebbe, when he wrote the Tanya, even though it was written before he got arrested, but it was written and revealed in a way which is the way he revealed Chassidus after Petersburg. But other than that, if you look at other Maimarim, you'll see that they're very short, very brief. Some of them are just a few lines. So after the Alter Rebbe went out of jail, basically people realized a lot of just like this story was a fake, and it was a false accusation. A lot of the things are false accusation, and the Chassidim are really great people. Doesn't mean that everybody decided that it's for them, but the recognition that it's a path in Torah is just a different path, not my path. It's a different path. But nevertheless, hundreds and probably thousands of people became Hasidim, actually through the Tanya. But the Fried Rebbe tells the story so we have an idea of what was going on and how things changed. There was a city called Shvinzion, and that city was one of the most aggressive against Hasidim. Aggressive, and a Hasid could almost not survive in that city. It had to do with the fact that there was a certain individual there, and this person of Shlomo Raphael's, he was one of the older Torah scholars of the generation. He was brilliant. He knew the whole Torah, everything, vast knowledge of Torah, and he was one of the strongest in opposition against the Alter Rebbe, and not strongest, but he was somebody that he had a lot of money, and he basically mobilized his whole family, his sons, his son-in-laws, his daughter-in-laws. Everybody was involved in the holy war to undermine the path of Chassidus. And he was very involved in that. In fact, he was very involved in doing the excommunication. The word in Hebrew is not even pronounced. It's spelled Ches Reish Mem. It's such a harsh, severe thing that we don't even want to pronounce the word. But it means that the person becomes excommunicated from the Jewish community. And it's done with a bezdin, with a whole procedure, and basically no one's allowed to buy anything from them. If they're a merchant, no one's allowed to marry any of their children. They're not allowed to stand in the 4 cubits. They can't use them for a minyan. And that's what they declared against the Baal Shem Tov. Then they did it against the Maggid. I don't think it ever happened against the Alter Rebbe, but it was the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid for sure. He was one of the people that was very, very involved. And he traveled from rabbi to rabbi to get them to sign it and to come out against the Baal Shem Tov and the Mizrach Maggid. However, there were Hasidim in his city, undercover, and they were slowly learning Hasidus with this person, Hasidus with that person, and a lot of people in the city, no one was aware they were becoming Hasidim. And after a while, and not only a lot of people, but even his own grandchildren became Hasidim. And after a while, they said that they feel that if the Alter Rebbe would come himself and speak, and people will get a chance to ask him questions and get answers, there'll probably be dozens and dozens of people that have become Hasidim. So Alter Rebbe agreed. In other words, he relied on their assessment that now is a good time to come. And he came to that city. He was there for 3 Shabbosim. And this is what happened. Alter Rebbe spoke publicly, spoke not again. This was Lithuania. Lithuania was full of Torah geniuses. What I'm talking about in the revealed part of Torah, in Gemara, Halacha, in these areas. And Alter Rebbe, as we know, was also not only also, but he was considered probably the greatest Torah genius in that generation. I think it was brought down in the Sikhs that the only one in that generation that could match up with the Vilna Gaon, who was the top person in the Lithuanian world, was the Alter Rebbe. In fact, there was one chassid that he was a student of the Vilna Gaon. He himself was a brilliant chassid and a brilliant Torah scholar. And he started to look into Chassidus. And he went to see the Alter Rebbe to see, if it's really for him or not, and if it's really kosher or not. He had a question in Gemara that he raised this question to the greatest geniuses, Torah scholars of the generation, even the Vilna Gaon himself, and nobody knew the answer. These are people who were the most brilliant people. There was hardly anything that they didn't know. They did not know the answer to this question. And he said that when he came to the Alter Rebbe, he decided he's going to ask him the question. He asked the Alter Rebbe the question. The Alter Rebbe gave him the answer. And he said for the next 3 days, he was like stunned. He was so beyond himself. He could not believe the answer the Alter Rebbe gave. It was deep, it was clear. It made everything clear and smooth. And for 3 days, I think it said, he was like walking in a daze. And he realized Alter Rebbe is a great Torah scholar, and he's a great tzaddik, and he's becoming a chassid. And then after he became a chassid, he came to the Vilna Gaon, and he told him, remember that question? I have an answer. When he gave him the answer, the Vilna Gaon said, this answer you only could have heard from a heavenly angel. Such an answer. So he said, I want to tell you who I heard it from. I heard it from the Alter Rebbe. So he said, I don't trust you. He regretted that he didn't tell it to him earlier, but he said, now that you're a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, you're saying it to me, so I should accept the Alter Rebbe, but I don't believe you. He wouldn't believe him. But when before he knew it, the Alter Rebbe, he said that if I would meet the person who gave you this answer, I would carry his clothes to the bathing house. I would serve him like a servant. So unfortunately, it was just meant from above that the machlekes should continue on. So this person was also one of these geniuses, Torah geniuses of the generation, and he was there in the times against the Baal Shem Tov, against the Mazir Magid, and now this is his city where the Alter Rebbe came. He after a while he stopped coming out against Hasidim. Like I said, his grandchildren were one of the ones who became these undercover Hasidim. So the last week that the Alter Rebbe was there, the Alter Rebbe davened in his shul, and again, people were asking questions in Gemara and Halach and Torah, and the Alter Rebbe gave them brilliant answers, and they were all inspired, uplifted, recognized Alter Rebbe is really a tzaddik, and then something happened. This person, Shlomo Farels, is all from the Friedrich Rebbe's Sikha. He was an older person, I think he was in his 90s already. Yeah. He started his speak. He said, I want to say something, but because I'm weak, I'm asking everyone to be total silence so you can hear what I have to say. Again, he was one of the most respected person in the whole region. And he said, he used the words from the Chumash, that I want to mention something that I did wrong many years ago. About 30 years ago, I was one of the people who was involved in the meeting among the great rabbis to come out against the Baal Shem Tov. I'm standing here in a shul, I'm standing in front of an Aron Kodesh, and I want to tell you that my intentions were pure as could be. I had no other intentions. I consider this Milchemes Mitzvah, a war of a mitzvah, to fight a force that's Chas v'Shalom going against Yiddishkeit. So he said, the day that I became 70 years old, I was sitting and learning Gemara. He still remembers which Gemara it was, Gemara Menachos. And I was overcome with sleep. I couldn't fight, I just fell asleep. In my sleep, I see this person, and he says to me, I am the Baal Shem Tov, that you and your colleagues came out with this horrible declaration against me many years ago, 7 years earlier. And he said, what you did was not according to Torah. According to Torah, before you come out with such a declaration, you have to do chakira v'drisha, which means there has to be an intense investigation, and only then are you allowed to do it. Did you ever do that investigation? Then I woke up, and I felt like my whole world became dark. He was right. I never made that investigation. So he said, after that, I started to investigate, and I found out the Chassidim are Yerushalayim, and the Mahadis. When I found all that out, I pulled out. I said, never again am I going to get involved in this much like this. Now, he was the leader. So people came to him. They sent a delegation to him to ask him what's going on. And he said, I didn't tell them the reason, but I didn't have anything to do with all this anymore. They said, maybe because he found out that they're really God-fearing Jews. He said, yes, that's for sure. But he wouldn't tell them the story with the Baal Shem Tov. So he said, right, today I'm 93 years old. I'm standing here in the shul, and I'm saying this with my full mouth, and he made a bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shehechiyanu v'gimanu v'giyanu b'zman hazeh, that I had the merit to see with my own face, my own eyes, the Goin and the Tzaddik that have brought tens of thousands of Yidden to Yerushalayim, the Alter Rebbe. This is the person who was in charge of all the opposition against the Baal Shem Tov. He made a shechiyanu that he had this fuss to see the Alter Rebbe. It wasn't very loud because he had a weak voice. But the Frierdiker Rebbe said the impact it had in the whole area, after this, hundreds of people more became Chassidim. And basically, the Alter Rebbe also sent shluchim. He had shluchim, just like the Rebbe had shluchim, but the Rebbe shluchim are out in the open. The Alter Rebbe shluchim were all undercover. They would come to a town and start learning Chassidus with one person. I mean, he didn't walk over and say, let's learn Chassidus. They learned with him. And, you know, there was there's someone in Israel, his name is Rabbi Mendel Vechter. He was a top Satmar Chassid. Satmar was a movement that used to be very against Chabad in a very, very serious way. And he got in touch with Rabbi Khan, which was the man who used to review the Rebbe's Sichas. He was a brilliant mind in Chassidus. And he studied with him, Chassidus, quietly. And he didn't really realize exactly what it is until slowly he began to tell him how this is Chassidus. He taught him the Rebbe's Sichas, didn't tell him that it's a Rebbe's Sichas, but he was blown away. Then he told them it's a Rebbe's Sichas. And that's how people like that who were very opposed, but when they learned it and they saw what it is, and then later they found out what it is, they took it differently. So there were Chassidim spread out all over the area. These are people who are brilliant in Torah in general, and they were able to teach Chassidus to these brilliant Torah scholars, and that's how the people that became Chassidim was multiplied by so much more after the Alter Rebbe went out from jail. And if you remember when we spoke about the Mittler Rebbe, after the Mittler Rebbe was installed, became Rebbe, tens of thousands, the first year, 15,000 more people became Chassidim. So basically, there was still opposition, as you see. When did it stop? When did the opposition stop? The opposition stopped by the Tzemach Tzedek. In other words, the Baal Shem Tov, the Magid, the Alter Rebbe, and the Mittler Rebbe, and all these generations, there was still very strong opposition to Chassidus. And it was in the generation of Tzemach Tzedek that it pretty much stopped. All those that were opposed before began to respect the Chassidim, even though they weren't Chassidim, but they began to respect the Chassidim. And there was sort of peace in both camps. The fact that you might hear today that people come out against Chassidim or against Lubavitch and things like that, this is a new phenomenon that was sort of renewed by people in this generation to renew something which was dead for almost 100 years and renew the old machlokes, unfortunately. But basically, for more than 100 years, from the time of the Tzemach Tzedek, it was pretty quiet. And this machlokes did not exist anymore. One of the stories related to Yud Tes Kislev is also there was a chassid that when the Alter Rebbe was arrested, he happened to be outside. And they saw him take the Alter Rebbe into this wagon with their swords. And when he saw this, he fainted. They brought him into a room. They woke him up. He fainted again. They woke him up. He fainted again. They realized that his life is in danger. And one of the Chassidim thought of an idea. And when he was in that state, he told him, there's good news, the Alter Rebbe was released and everything's okay. When he heard that, he calmed down. But he was so weak, he couldn't go outside. So they tried to keep him in that room locked up as long as they can, so he shouldn't know the news that the Alter Rebbe is really not released from jail. Of course, once he got up, healthy enough to walk around on his own, he found out the truth, the Alter Rebbe is still in jail. And even though he took it very much to heart, but nevertheless, he did not faint again. I guess the fainting is from the shock of the initial news. But the fact that he already heard the news and he fainted already, he didn't faint the second time. He lived in a city which was a little bit further away from where the Alter Rebbe was. When he came back to his city, the Chassidim in that city made up that every night they're going to gather together in Fabring, learn together, say L'chaim together, and whatever they said, Tillim during the day, whatever they did, for the Alter Rebbe to be released, and they made up they're going to be that way all the time. Naturally, in those days, he didn't hear the news so quickly. So it was the night of Yud Tes Kislev. They didn't know the Alter Rebbe was released from jail, so they all got together. It was the night before, and this chassid said that he had a dream. Now he used to be a chassid of another Rebbe called Rabbi Mendel Hordok. We spoke about him. He was one of the three that went to Eretz Yisrael. And when that Rebbe left, he told him, I can't be without a physical Rebbe that I can go to and talk to. So he told him to go to the Alter Rebbe. So he became the Alter Rebbe's chassid. And this Rebbe came to him in a dream, Rebbe of Hardok. And he said, being that you used to be my chassid, so I'm coming to tell you something of what's going on upstairs. And he said that it's Yud Tes Kislev, which is the Yom Hilul of the Mezritcha Magid. So all the tzaddikim gathered together in the chamber of the Mezritcha Magid to celebrate his Yartzeit. And the Baal Shem Tov was there, the Arizal was there, and all the tzaddikim were there together with the Mezritcha Magid. And suddenly the Reb Shimon Bar Yochai came to join them. And the Mezritcha Magid formed a Bezdin, three of the tzaddikim together, and he said to them, my student, he called him Zalmanu, my student Zalmanu is in jail, and he needs to be freed, and I'm asking the Bezdin to rule that he should go out of jail and be free. They made this Bezdin, I think it was Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the Arizal, and the Baal Shem Tov, and they all ruled that the Alter Rebbe has to go out free. So I'm letting you know that this is what's happening. So the chassid told them the news, they were all excited, but being that they don't know it, they know it from a dream, but they don't know in reality, but these chassidim, when they had dreams, they knew that it meant something. So they still, they were fast every day, whatever they did, they continued to do. Only Hanukkah did they find out the news that the Alter Rebbe was released from jail. That's how long it took for them to find out. So this was this chassid that had fainted. He was zeicher to that. Now there's a lot that we can talk about Tanya itself, the Sefer of Tanya, and there's a booklet that I gave out to be able to look at. But the one thing I wanted to mention, I did tell you the story that Alter Rebbe wanted the Tanya to be ready on Yud Tes Kislev, but instead it was ready on Chav Kislev. And Alter Rebbe was very upset, very, very aggravated. It wasn't ready on time. They said, Chav Kislev, Chav Kislev, Chav Kislev. I wanted it to be ready on Yud Tes Kislev, which should be able to be studied on the day of the Yartzeit of our Rebbe. But when Hashem wants, that's what turns out to be. So later it was explained that had the Tanya been ready on time, he wouldn't have to gone through the 3 hours that he suffered on Chav Kislev. A number of years ago, what year was it exactly? Membez, I think, in the 80s. The Rebbe requested, it was Yud Tes Kislev, the Rebbe spoke about when the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya, he wrote one edition, but then he wrote a second edition with corrections and adjustments and made it different. The first edition we don't have, we just have the Tanya the way we know it. But before we got the Tanya the way we know it, the Alter Rebbe wrote what we call Madura Kama, the first edition. And the Rebbe says he wants to have that printed. Now it's Yud Tes Kislev, and he wants to have it printed for the Yartzeit of the Alter Rebbe. From Yud Tes Kislev to Chavdala Teves is a little bit more than 4 weeks. It's 53 chapters, and there's so much work that needs to be done. We can't just print it. They had to work a lot on the written copy and details. So the people who worked on it basically were given the job to work on it, and they must be ready. The Rebbe called every day to find out how far do they get. What's the update? Is it going to be ready on time? I know I have a brother-in-law who was one of the people working on it. These guys did not go home all these weeks. Mama just slept in the office, and they were just up day and night, and And they got it ready like right before the Chavdal Tevis, and after everything, with all the work they put in, they said it was still miraculous. They can't believe that it actually was completed on time. The Rebbe spoke about it bringing. The Rebbe gave them a special thank you. One thing which is unusual, he also gave a thank you to the wives of all these people that were working on it because their husbands were not around. And the Rebbe said that by printing this in the right time, this was a tikkun for the fact that the Al Tanya wasn't printed then in the right time that it was supposed to be printed. Then it was supposed to be printed on the yard side of the Maggid, and it didn't work out. This is supposed to be printed on the yard side of the Alter Rebbe, and it did work out. So obviously there was more to the story, the fact that it wasn't written on time. Okay, tomorrow we have a special program, as you know. So we'll start the regular time, 8:30. And I think that the sheet was given out already, what will be scheduled tomorrow. Yeah. On the wall? Okay.